Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tanya June Moore. Welcome to the Sedona International Film Festival 2020. I have more incredible filmmakers in the seat, but first I want to say thank you to the Sedona Advertising Agency, the Sedona Rouge, and Broadcast Rentals for making our media room possible this year and our live stream. So thank you. All right, guys, introduce yourselves as if people aren't going to know your face, but
yeah.
How about you first?
Yeah, sure. My name's Michael Sellers. I'm the director and producer of Return to Hardwick.
And
I'm Michael Cudlitz, and I'm the narrator of Return to Hardwick.
And we have a trailer for this film, but I do have to say, it is not the film that I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes. You're welcome.
I appreciate it. You've had a screening. You had a screening last night. How is the Sedona Film Festival for you? How has it been?
Yeah, well, for me personally, it's awesome. I mean, even to get the call from Patrick and say, hey, we've been sort of scouting you out and saw this film that you have, I was very happy to be able to be a part of it and actually to come down and see it all happen. I mean, how better can you get to have your film like screen at a film festival? So Here we are. I don't know, you feel pretty good about it.
I love it. Every time I see the film, I see things I didn't see before. Mm-hmm. As a narrator, I sort of did all my work in a booth separate from the putting all the imagery and seeing all the other interviews from the vets and the family members. So I actually love seeing it with an audience, and I love seeing it projected on the big screen, and I see something different every time.
And how has the hospitality been for the two of you here at
Oh my gosh. I mean, come on, we're set up in a nice hotel. You got shuttles from here to there, people smiling all the time, everybody so nice at the theater. I mean, it's great. I mean, you can't get better than that. I've been to a lot of festivals, and this one is up there. It's at the top.
We like to say that it's the Filmmakers Festival, and everybody else has to live up to us.
Yeah, I like that.
So you tell an incredible story about a part of history that I didn't know anything about.
Oh, great.
I mean, I know about World War II.
Yeah,
I understand all the topics. But this one is quite a winner. It definitely hit home at heart. Let's check out the trailer, and then we'll kind of get into some discussion about it. Sure.
At the beginning of World War II, the senior leaders of the country knew that we were going to need a large air force.
The first all-American bombing operation against Nazi-occupied Europe begins in England.
The thing I remember about the war is the bonding that takes place when there's only 10 of you that go to work every day.
I thought it was a very large place. I had never been on airfields before.
One of the objectives is to assure that the deeds of the men who served during World War II won't be forgotten.
Most of us like to go to a place where we will learn more about ourselves than we thought we knew. And that's why we have Hardwick.
The thing about it is when the Americans come over and they show appreciation, they love it that we're keeping the memories alive of what their families, friends, relatives did during the war.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you.
It's a really intense look at a small piece that made a huge difference.
Yeah.
So how did the story come to you?
Well, my grandfather, he's in the group, in the film. So I used to go to reunions with him all the time, and he would ask me, one of the big ones was one to England, and he's like, you want to go to England with me? I had no idea what the heck it was about. I'm in my 20s, and I'm like, sure, trip to England, no problem. But the British there, literally, this is in a town called Norwich, sort of northeastern part of England. And they are open arms. They come out of their homes. The whole town is so happy that these Americans are back. And back in the day, the air bases took over these towns. They basically, all these Americans just sort of flooded in. And all these people remember that. So as I'm seeing this and my grandfather's waving to people and everything, I'm like, wow, he was a part of something. Mm-hmm. So I go to reunions, a lot of local reunions in the United States, and then it's a nonprofit group, so they have to do projects. They have to stay viable. They have to do stuff. They've done like a stained glass window, raised up $20,000 for that at least to put in a church, memorials, things around at other museums, and then a film came up, an idea for a film. I'm in the industry, I work in New York, I work in post-production, so I kind of went like, I'll help. So we started talking about it, reunion after reunion, and then they started pulling out money. They actually pulled out some money to go do this initial shoot, which is what you kind of saw here, the trip to Hardwick. So that's how that kind of started.
And how did you get involved in this?
It's always a funny little
yeah, because I didn't know Michael before the film. I was recommended by a friend of Michael's, knew the godfather of my kids, and they had worked together. And he said, "Your buddy used to work with Band of Brothers, right? Didn't he? Does he know? Would you be interested in helping out my friend? He's doing this film. We need a narrator." And they had sent me an email, and I was sort of like, "Oh, grandson of a kid's doing some project for his grandpa. He's got some footage. He wants to know." I was like, "Yeah, whatever."
Yes.
Absolutely. I'm in.
Yeah.
You want to know about it? No, I don't care. Whatever. It's this whole thing. And I said yes. Met Michael through email first, or maybe on the phone first. And he's like, "Yeah, I want to, would love for you to be part of this." I go, "I'm in." He goes, "Well, let me send you." "No, don't worry about it. I'm in." And then I started seeing some of the footage, and someone was like, "Holy crap, this kid's kicking ass!" And I don't say kid like that sounds like
That's
demeaning,
fine.
but in my mind, it was a kid doing this thing for his grandpa. When you think grandpa, it's like, "Grandpa, let's help grandpa out." And it's amazing. It's a world-class, project.
Yes.
This is not like somebody scrapped something together. There's a lot of effort into this. There's a lot of amazing footage, a lot of amazing interviews, very reminiscent of how Band of Brothers was started, which I had the honor and privilege to be part of. Initially, Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks did those interviews with those men. And it was a project unto itself, just with the veterans, with Band of Brothers. They saw within that, once they started doing these interviews, that there was something much bigger that needed to be captured and preserved. And that's how the whole project of Band of Brothers came about. But that storytelling or method, or that sort of sort of doorway in through the vet's eyes, does so much to help legitimize the facts that you're about to see, and totally sort of glosses over anything that may be missing from the visual. You get the actual story from the veteran, fills it in, and you can help fill in all the pieces that we're not able to visually see.
Right.
So I think he did a fantastic job with it. It's one of those projects that is time sensitive. It's like these stories needed to be captured.
And they need to be captured now.
Because the next generation is not going to have the source material.
Right. Well, and that jumps right into what I was...
Yeah.
There's an entire community in another country.
Yeah.
And they're young.
Yeah.
That are saving these artifacts. That are telling this story.
Yeah.
And they're proud of it. Was that really the inspiration once you got over there and you realized this was much bigger?
Well, you have to kind of go back to when I was telling the story of the first time I went back. And the museum, you have to understand, these people, they lived it during that time. And it's been passed on to the younger generation, so they live it now. Over 60 air bases in that area. And you're talking about, this is just one air base that had one bomb group. But all these other air bases have their own museums. They have their own, people that are remembering, basically. So when I went over the first time, we went into the museum, and I was like, what the heck? These people just focused on this group, of what this group did on this base, and the surrounding villages, and they were a part of that group. So, and again, you multiply that out throughout the countryside, and they've got their own thing going on, so.
We don't seem to see a lot of that here.
Well, you see it in a more commercial way.
Yes.
You see it in a big way. I mean, we were even talking about the National Museum of World War II Museum down in New Orleans. You've got, Museum of Flight up in Seattle. There's very
But this is community.
This is completely community, yeah.
Yeah, they're not getting paid for this. They're not getting...
Not really. They're all volunteers. In fact,
Yes.
they do get some funds, whatever the 93rd does have in their bank. They sort of send it over if they need help. Like, I think we helped them out with security cameras at one point to pay for that. So we are connected in that way. But yes, they're volunteers for that. So.
How did it feel for you to be wrapped up in this again?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, people are like, oh, you know so much about, and I'm like, no. I know about this group,
Yes.
and I know about the 101st.
Yeah.
There's so much history, and there's so many stories. And one of the interesting things, though, is in doing this, is that you realize that a lot of the stories
Commingle.
and it's a common history, a shared history with a completely different experience, if that makes sense. Like, some of these guys were paratroopers, some of these guys flew bombers, some of these men and women, the women were at the time were nurses. Some people drove trucks, but the thing that they all have in common is this bond that they get when they go into this type of situation, where in their world it almost becomes another little microcosm where they're concerned about the men and women who are next to them.
Yes.
So the world's become smaller and smaller and smaller, but the smaller they become, you realize they're almost the same story. So although this is the story of the 93rd bomb group, this is the story of every single bomb group, because the men that were in those groups had the shared experience of flying, whether it be the fighter pilots with the two per plane, or the bomb groups 10 per plane, or the bigger ships with hundreds of men, but smaller groups within that, and so it's like the same story.
And
you seem like an expert, actually. Right?
I know. I'll just sit back.
An expert with no information.
But I also love that you brought a love story into this.
I did, yeah.
It's not just this hardcore man documentary about the war. There is this beautiful feminine side that comes out that blew me away. I was like, wait, what?
So I actually can't wait till that part of the film shows up when we screen it, because I know. And maybe it's more of maybe some of the women in the audience are like, all right, I'm here with my husband, we're watching this military film. Not to say that women couldn't be into that, but I think it is maybe a more male-centric thing, I guess. But when that part shows up with Gail and her talking about her mother's experience, we literally sort of see it through there and hear those letters from her.
Yes.
Done. Like, when I met Gail on this trip, and then I followed up with her after that, and I said, I think there may be something. She's like, well, I have letters, I have photos. I was like, what? Okay, let's back up for a minute and let's talk about this. So when I found out that it was a full story going on and that they met there, her parents, done. Yes. And I just had to play that out a little bit. But.
So it's fulfilling to see that there is something for everybody. It's not just another war documentary. This is a fine piece of work that you've woven a lot of heroes into on every level that's relatable to everyone.
The main thing too was the educational part, which, I don't think it brings the film down. Could the film go even bigger? Maybe, but the 93rd's mandate was to make it educational. So we tell the history of the war in here. You can literally go from the beginning to Pearl Harbor all the way to the end of the troops going into these concentration camps.
Yes.
And liberating them. So it's one of those things where I believe this could pop into a classroom somewhere that you hit play and in 73 minutes people could learn about the war. In depth, no, they can go off on their own and really find in-depth stuff, but this does give an overall and tell basically how the 93rd is involved with that. So it's cool.
What's the website for this?
Hardwick Film.
Hardwickfilm.com?
.com. Yep.
So stay in touch with this one. I think you'll enjoy it as an audience. I hope that your next screening goes as well as your first one.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Tuesday in
plug it. When is it?
10:20 on Tuesday. This Tuesday.
So get your tickets now. You're going to want to see this one. It is a really, really good film, and we really appreciate you both being here representing this for us. Cool. Stay tuned. We will be live very shortly with another filmmaker in our seat. Our hashtags this year are #Sedona Film Fest 2020 and Sedona Film Fest 26.